internet. So today I want to review a very short but very interesting article that I found very eye-opening in terms of suicide attempts and mainly firearms suicide attempts. So because of the nature of this article, it's going to be on very complex and very subtle and very painful sometimes topics, which are the topics of facial destruction through firearms and suicide. So this is your trigger warning. I don't want you to be put in a bad place by this article. It's very well written, it's not the point of the article, but because of the topics it handles, it's going to be one that's hard to handle for certain people, and I just wanted to let you know before tackling it properly. So the full name of the article, which I will link in the description because you can find it for free, is Psychological Issues of Firearms, Suicide Attempts, and as a subtitle it's Facial Explosion as a Paradoxical Rebirth. So in this article, Caroline Demeule is going to basically talk about how she has met with people who have attempted to commit suicide by firearm, by blowing their faces off, basically. So she explains that those people, even though the gesture of shooting oneself in the face might seem, or on the surface appear, as something that's completely random or just practical, as i.e. the best way of ending one's life, she says that it's never something as simple, which is something very interesting. She says that basically it is about destroying the face. And what is a face? So she goes into detail. She says that the face is our identity. It is who we are and how we represent both to ourselves in our minds, but also on the exterior, in our relationships. And that basically attacking this interface is a way of breaking the identity, of destroying the identity. Sometimes it is to show how the person truly feels. By blowing up his face, so to speak, I'm going to use vocabulary that may not be subtle, but it's for you to understand. By blowing up one's face and destroying it, because that's what it is, it's going to appear the monstrosity of the individual, meaning that what he might feel inside as being a monster, being destructive, is going to be shown on the face. That the face is no longer a mask, it no longer hides anything, it just shows what they feel inside as being a monster on the outside, on the interface itself with the world. And she says that basically current neurological research has shown that through all the parts of the body, our brains, not just minds, but really brains, have more time processing the faces of other people, that really requires a lot of mental and neurological efforts on the part of the brain. And she says it's not for nothing, it's because basically these are the first interfaces, even in infants' relationships. These are our faces, how we interact with the world, and our basis for our identity, both for oneself and for the others. And she says that in terms of committing suicide by firearms, it's often people that are pushed at the very brink. They do commit that action. Often that action is shown to other people, meaning people are in the vicinity or people are nearby, or even sometimes, unfortunately, they blow themselves up in front of other people. And it's always in a way addressed to the other, meaning that it's not something that's isolated. It's in a way linked with the relationships and the other, in meaning not the self, but also the objects, to use the object relational theory aspect of it. So she says that basically it's always in a way addressed to someone else and to oneself. It's a way of both showing the monstrosity that one feels inside and aligning it, a bit like Dorian Gray, if you've read the book or seen the movies. Basically, it's realigning one's self-image with the exterior facade of what one is. And so she goes into very interesting details that in a way these attempts suicide are in a way a paradoxical way of trying to get rid of that identity that was never seen or never built, to try and build something more genuine, and that paradoxically, very paradoxically, people might feel better afterwards, which is something that's incredibly strange when you, like, on the surface, when you think about it. But she says, and it's something that often surprises and sometimes astonishes the therapists that work in the field, that basically these people feel relief. And that is because she says that there is a deep unconscious hatred for the identity could not come, or sometimes this trauma that was never seen, and that never seenness is like a, how can I say, an unknown within the person. The person knows, but they can't show it to the outside world. They can't even verbalize it to the outside world. And that the broken face is a way of not just saying, but showing at the concrete level. Like, there is no way of avoiding the broken face. And she gives the example in her essay of Patrice, which is a French name, of a man that was severely abused as a child and who could never really be seen for who he was by his mother, and his father was brutal and violent towards him. And he does say that basically he couldn't care less about his face or how people see him, but he feels better that action that was caused by basically an intrusion and theft within his shop, but basically it's an intrusion, that reactivated all of the trauma, and that basically he wanted something to be seen, something of what he truly was, and that was always constantly pushed down and denied. And that was a very interesting case when she presents it, basically stating that the psychologist is virtually the first mirror, a mirror that unfortunately the first objects, or at least when I say objects here, I mean, of course, other people, not objects like physical objects, right? Other people could not see who that person was and who those people are. So basically, there's a drastic form of destruction that occurs paradoxically when suicide attempts fail in order to be reborn, but reborn as something new, someone new, as I would say. And she says that basically through talk therapy, through the fact of having a psychotherapist the first mirror, they become envisagé, which is a very clever wordplay on the French. En meaning in, and visage is basically face, so they become in-faced. They have a new face in a way, and it's a very interesting pun, and it's not just a pun, I think it's a whole concept. But anyway, very interestingly enough, the envisagé, basically that becomes a new face, a new identity, and they can shed a bit like a snake, I think. Their old identity in profits of a new one. Of course, it's not to generalize, it's not always the case. This is not dogma, right? This is always a theory and evaluation of clinical material and her perspective onto what is the issues of firearms and the destruction of the face as an interface and as an identity. However, she does note something very interesting, that statistically, once people have blown their faces off, of course, I'm sorry, I might have to use another word for that, but basically once they've shot themselves in the face, basically they don't try and commit suicide again. They have a very, very, very low rate apparently of trying again, which is incredibly interesting. That means that there is something to it, something that we would not think at the first hand, that basically because one would think that once the identity is destroyed, there's a trying again and again. But no, sins do calm down. And that's part of the surprise of a lot of clinicians, she says in her article. So anyway, I found that the article was very, very interesting. And anyway, it shows us that the identity is both something of a psychic construct, of course, and it expresses itself physically. Of course, here we talked about the face, but it most likely is extended to the body, to who we are and what we are. So there's that interplay between physicalness and who we are, and that psychic. And it can go both ways. Like, the expression of our identity is both in a physical plane and a psychic plane, and that both, in a way, have to be aligned for there to be a psychic, I can say, appeasement, and that those suicide attempts are a desperate way of realigning both what the patient subjectively feels and what they show the world through their face. I hope you found the article interesting. I'll be linking it in the description, as I was saying, and if you have any questions and anything you'd like to ask, please feel free. Anyway, I'll see you in the next one. Bye.